Yeah, I want to get on with another video about Putin in another light. I know he's highly respected by some individuals, but I gotta really tell you, the game that's going on here is, I swear, people, I get just, I can't believe how people just don't see what's going on. I notice people saying Putin's against the New World Order. I say he's part of it in a different facet. But I have to tell you this, there's one thing I've really known from way back, and actually since the 30s, ever since FDR was president, the elite in the West and the communists on the side where Russia were have been working hand in hand, even when during the Cold War, and the only time they weren't was at the outset of the Bolshevik Revolution and a time of Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Hoover, that the presidents at that time were would not recognize the Bolsheviks as the legitimate government of Russia. But the thing is, when FDR was installed as president, and ever since that time, the Russians in the Soviet Union have been propped up by people like the Rockefellers through loans through the Import-Export Bank. And, even during the time of Vietnam, during Lend-Lease, they were saying none of this material could be used for, to help the North Vietnamese, but indirectly it did. And during that time, Lend-Lease happened where the American people lent the Russians loans. Well, guess what happened to those loans? Later on, they got forgiven. So basically, the American people funded both sides of the Vietnam War. You know? So, but I got to tell you this, that, considering that Putin came from the KGB, now I don't want to even make it look like he's the big mastermind behind all this deal, because, what Major Anatoly Golitsyn said, he was the defector from the KGB in 1961 to the United States, and also Zedzisław Rauers, who was the ambassador from Japan, ambassador from Poland to Japan, who defected in 1981, I believe it was. He's deceased actually now. Major Golitsyn's still alive, I think, in the UK. He's an American citizen. I think he works closely with Christopher Story of British intelligence. But anyway, the thing is that it's almost like playing out, right exactly the way he said. Everything he said came true. The solidarity in Poland. Lech Walesa was probably, some hero that was put up by, other elements. They could have just killed him in the first place if they wanted to, right? But they didn't. The reunification of Germany, bringing down the Berlin Wall, Glasnost, Perestroika, all that stuff was predicted by Major Anatoly Golitsyn. So you got to figure Putin came from the KGB. Now, I think, though, he's not really the mastermind behind all this stuff. He's playing his role. Yeah, I want to get on with another video about Putin in another light. I know he's highly respected by some individuals, but I gotta really tell you, the game that's going on here is, I swear, people, I get just, I can't believe how people just don't see what's going on. I notice people saying Putin's against the New World Order. I say he's part of it in a different facet. But I have to tell you this, there's one thing I've really known from way back, and actually since the 30s, ever since FDR was president, the elite in the West and the communists on the side where Russia were have been working hand in hand, even when during the Cold War, and the only time they weren't was at the outset of the Bolshevik Revolution and a time of Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Hoover, that the presidents at that time were would not recognize the Bolsheviks as the legitimate government of Russia. But the thing is, when FDR was installed as president, and ever since that time, the Russians in the Soviet Union have been propped up by people like the Rockefellers through loans through the Import-Export Bank. And, even during the time of Vietnam, during Lend-Lease, they were saying none of this material could be used for, to help the North Vietnamese, but indirectly it did. And during that time, Lend-Lease happened where the American people lent the Russians loans. Well, guess what happened to those loans? Later on, they got forgiven. So basically, the American people funded both sides of the Vietnam War. You know? So, but I got to tell you this, that, considering that Putin came from the KGB, now I don't want to even make it look like he's the big mastermind behind all this deal, because, what Major Anatoly Golitsyn said, he was the defector from the KGB in 1961 to the United States, and also Zedzisław Rauers, who was the ambassador from Japan, ambassador from Poland to Japan, who defected in 1981, I believe it was. He's deceased actually now. Major Golitsyn's still alive, I think, in the UK. He's an American citizen. I think he works closely with Christopher Story of British intelligence. But anyway, the thing is that it's almost like playing out right exactly the way he said. Everything he said came true. The solidarity in Poland. Lech Walesa was probably some hero that was put up by other elements. They could have just killed him in the first place if they wanted to, right? But they didn't. The reunification of Germany, bringing down the Berlin Wall, Glasnost, Perestroika, all that stuff was predicted by Major Anatoly Golitsyn. So you got to figure Putin came from the KGB. Now, I think, though, he's not really the mastermind behind all this stuff. He's playing his role. He's one of the top people. It's not necessarily the money oligarchs, but it's the same as it always been. I know the KGB now is called the FSB, but the FSB actually has more power than the KGB, what it was called before, the predecessor. As a matter of fact, the FSB is like saying the Drug Enforcement Agency, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, and the NSA all wrapped up into one, man. It's like got a hell of a lot of power, baby. So, but people don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear this, Now, I don't really hate this guy or nothing like that, but I realize it's very frustrating trying to convince people in the United States what the real deal is, because they just believe what they want to hear. They're a bunch of softies. They just freaking can't believe something could be, this bad or this well planned against the United States, and really what's going on. And I'm not talking about the United States like, kiss the elitist ass, but I'm talking about our Constitution, our republic, and the rights that we have enshrined in law that are God-given rights that are in the Bill of Rights. That's what I'm talking about. In Russia, the law is Vlad, that's what the law is. That's what it is. But, if you really want to get down on what Vlad is about, he's a disciplined mofo that's a loner. He's a lone wolf, man. That's what he is. He doesn't have all this, everything's like, photo ops and stuff like that. But, as a person, the guy's a lone wolf. When that decision was made with the Crimea, it shows what kind of power he's got. Pull them insignias off everything, get all the tanks and the trucks painted with no insignias with Russia on there, go in there and take over. Where'd that order come from? Old Vlad, right? He's got a lot of power. Old Obama can't do that kind of stuff because we still got, most of the Constitution holding together over here. Nobody's got that kind of power. But, I got to point out, this guy is actually somebody that's still, he's actually getting highly respected in the West, amazingly. And, you can respect him in some ways, but I have to tell you this, they're all working together. They've always worked together. Maybe he's not playing exactly the same ballpark as, some other things, but, even during the height of the Cold War, people would never believe in a million years that there was a plan underneath it all where they're all working together. In other words, tensions and conflict produce change, the Hegelian concept. What the hell do you think is going on right now? The same thing. It's actually the tensions between Russia and the United States, even though some of the tensions got a little higher, it ain't nothing like it was in the 50s and 60s at all. Not even close, okay? Not even close. So, maybe it's going to get there and go beyond that. But as of right now, it's not even close to that. But, back then, there was a lot of underhanded things going on, like Rockefeller, for instance. A lot of stuff propped up. The Soviet Union would have fell apart a long time ago if there wasn't a lot of technology that was flat out given to them, man. I mean, really. A lot of people don't realize that. And I know they got a lot of technology from the Nazis, too. Well, just like the United States did with Operation Paperclip, the Soviets did, too. That's really where a lot of this high-tech garbage came from, actually, after World War II. A lot of Nazi scientists who were captured by both the Russians and sent, brought over here to the United States. And a lot of technology did come from, including our space program and including the Russian space program. But if you look at the policies of the Council on Foreign Relations, if you never heard of that, and what Rockefeller stated a long time ago, and what a lot of other people have stated, back when FDR became president, he used to say he used to call Joseph Stalin Uncle Joe Stalin. He used to call him like he's a big teddy bear, man. Real sweet guy, you know what I mean? Come on. And, people bought it. So it's the same kind of game that's going on today. Now, the thing is, some people are waking up, something's wrong here in the United States. And so you got people like Ron Paul. Now, I know this is not going to be popular to say this, but I'm going to tell you right now, this guy has got to be some kind of led from the top opposition from the establishment itself. I know he's a Freemason, which may be a good or bad thing. I don't think all Masons are bad, but he's one of them. And I think he's up there, and I think he's playing a game with the New World Order to the hilt. As a matter of fact, when we looked at the last election, when Romney became candidate, this guy, he talks like he was going to knock out the Federal Reserve, get rid of, bring back all the troops, and, he couldn't even fight for what happened in his primaries. But people want to believe this shit. They want to believe this shit all the way. I know that even way back when a lot of these so-called conservatives are around, it's all talk. That's all it is. But, the only real patriots are the ones like this. For God, family, country, and a republic and a constitution. I don't know if I'm getting at all that in the bottom there, if you see that, right? But, it's like, the thing is, people do not, and the thing is, actually, you shouldn't be playing at this direct frontal assault because, the problem is, when you get like this, you become a target itself. I know a lot of these people probably got the right idea in their hearts, but you don't want to be walking around in a green uniform like the green tree suit. You're better off walking around in a regular suit. But, carrying the big stick ain't a bad idea, too, as long as it's concealed carry, right? So, but, this is something that Ron Paul has nothing to do with. And a lot of people just don't get it. He talks to this crowd. He plays like he's leading this crowd. But I'm going to tell you, he is opposition led from the top. And, he basically just secured the future for his son, Rand Paul. But I'm saying there's a load of them like this. You got, InfoWars owned by Time Warner. You got Jesse Ventura, Time Warner with his conspiracy channel and all that garbage. They're all playing you like a bunch of suckers. Now, the ones that are actually leading the patriot movement more than anything, and I got to tell you this right now. I'm a USA person, man, which means I notice everybody in the USA has been here. Well, a lot of people have been here longer than I have been, family-wise. But, the patriot movement also has people in there that are anti-Semitic. Sometimes they're anti-Jewish, when you want to call them, and also anti-black. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing. I am one person that sticks up for Jews, and I stick up for blacks, unless you're doing something really crazy, like, I know blacks are getting freaking screwed over left and right. I have to tell you, they're getting led around and getting hoodwinked by some of the biggest shysters on the top, like, even some of their own leaders, and, getting led astray big time and freaking used to the max. I know what's going on there, big time, man, but, when it really comes down to it, I side with anybody from my country first, all the freaking way. That's what it comes down to, man. Because, I know what's going on in the Patriot movement. It's also gotten co-opted by Russia Today. It's weird. You got a country on the opposite side of the world that was communist the whole freaking time, and they're like the halfway voice of the Patriot movement. And who runs Russia Today? Vlad in the Kremlin. How stupid can people be? Ah! You know? And if you put some short skirts up there, they believe everything they say. That's really what it comes down to. I can't believe this garbage, man. I can't believe how stupid the old people are that follow the alternative media are. It's amazing. But you know, if you look back even before Vlad was around, there's been a lot of stuff going on for many years, even with, Rockefellers and stuff. I mentioned before that Truman was one of the first ones that really pushed for the national health care. That is total government control, man, to the max. That ain't, I'm glad if it helps somebody, but I don't really think it's the best damn thing in the world. It's got too much control. It's got too much power. It can be abused to the max. They could be drugging up and dumbing down every freaking person in the United States through national health care. These stupid teachers and everything that they have in schools, they could be saying your kid was a little restless today, give him a bunch of drugs. It's really gotten down to the point where national health care through the pharmaceutical industry is going to be a way to really control the population and also control the voices of dissent. Because actually in the Soviet Union itself, most people didn't go to the gulags. They went to psychiatric readjustment centers to fix their attitude. You know that? A lot of people don't know that. They didn't actually go to like the Siberian gulags or something like that in the north, to work in the mines in this cold snow. Nope. They used to go to the freaking like it's not a work camp, but basically an education place where they give them the right kind of medicines and things to change their attitude. And I can see this can happen very easily in the United States. If you're annoyed at something and you don't like it, well, screw it. The government comes in here and they do their thing. And this has always been, like I'm going to tell you, the Rockefellers, they have been behind communism to the max, man. All these yo-yos, man, on the top. The Council on Foreign Relations. Actually, when the United Nations deal almost fell through, I think, when they didn't have the land, who donated the land for the building? Rockefeller. But actually, the United Nations, or the UN organization, it's been on the drawing boards back in the 30s when the League of Nations was failed to be ratified by the U.S. Senate back in the 20s. As a matter of fact, if you look back at the National Geographic edition right after Pearl Harbor, National Geographic, they referred to the Allies as the United Nations organization. Not during the Korean War. I'm talking about at the outset of World War II. That's because the concept has been around since the 30s. And who built up the Soviet Union in the 30s? The people say, I've seen people on YouTube that tell me, I don't know what I'm talking. They gave $100 printing plates and equipment and plans for equipment and also things to, for factories that they could build up their military way before Hitler ever invaded Poland. That damn thing was a setup to the max. And you know what? That's what it was. A global war for global end, which was to bring about the United Nations. And, that's one of the instruments, actually probably more the Import-Export Bank and the International Monetary Fund and other entities like that to bring about a global government. I think's coming up is the next war is going to freaking bring it about. But they might fail. But, I got to tell people, though, is that when you're jumping on the RT bandwagon or the Ron Paul bandwagon or this other garbage, any other kind of garbage like that, you're already being set up. There is no bandwagon. Just don't jump on a bandwagon, period. Recognize that both sides, opposition's led from the top. Now, here's a good example because back during the Reagan years, I remember when he came in, God, everybody's like cheering him on, like, oh, great, we got rid of Jimmy Carter and shit. Military hated Jimmy Carter, even though Jimmy Carter was handpicked in Bohemian Grove a long time ago. They knew the guy was going to be the next president. He was handpicked. That guy, they just said he's going to be the next president. But Reagan, he's big business, oil guy all the way. Now, I'm going to tell you, when Gorbachev was president at that time and Reagan was president, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That's what one of Reagan's things he said in one of his big speeches and stuff. They knew that wall was planned to be torn down. Major Anatoly Golitsyn said that back in the 70s. I'm talking about the Berlin Wall. They said it was going to happen. But, getting back to my main point on this deal is, that was the inner circle of the KGB. Where did Putin come from? The KGB. He might not be the head guy that's really running Russia. There's probably names and faces you don't know in the KGB that are actually running Russia. Putin doesn't have a lot of intermingling in the political circles. He's almost like a stoic, lone wolf guy that just does his thing. He's out there in the public sometimes. He goes to different countries, and he's got a very regimented daily routine. And he doesn't really have family or nothing like that. I think the real power that's controlling the whole of Russia behind the scenes, not the oligarchs. It's the same as what it's always been. I know I called it the KGB, but it's the FSB. Same thing. That's what I think is running Russia. Now, when Gorbachev, before he even stepped down, they gave him the keys to the naval facility, the Presidio, which is overlooking the hills of San Francisco, before Gorbachev even stepped down as president of Russia, or leader of Russia, whatever the hell he was, if they call that a president. And, that he didn't call it the Gorbachev USA Foundation back then, but you got to remember, he was actually given the keys to a former U.S. military installation for his foundation, while he was still the leader of Russia. Now tell me they're not in cahoots with each other. Now, the Gorbachev USA Foundation, do you know what one of its main purposes is? Environmentalism. Control of all resources in the world. Annihilation of private property rights. Environmentalism has actually, it's a good thing in some ways. I mean, conserving the earth, I believe in that like the American Indians believe in it, but not the way the communists believe in it. But environmentalism has actually become a safe refuge for communists, because through the environment you can negate all property rights. They own the whole deal, man. You know what I mean? Gorbachev is actually, that's what his Gorbachev USA Foundation's really about. It's all about sustainable development and environmentalism and fighting global warming and all this other stuff. It's like global warming. Well, we'll see how this global warming goes, because I saw on Adapt 2030 about how the, what do you call it, they had like almost a foot of snow in Saudi Arabian deserts and stuff. I was like, yeah, global warming. But we'll see. It's going to keep going like this every year for decades to come, because even Eric Doller says that the sun is actually losing a lot more of its energy, or whatever it puts out, and we're going into a cooling period the way it was 400 years ago, probably. So much for global warming, but that'll come about and be obvious to everybody at one point in time, and not too many years from now, or maybe even this year. But the thing is, Gorbachev and Reagan, and Brezhnev and Carter or whatever, and I think the only president we really, or the only two presidents we really had that were, and I can't even say much with Nixon, because Nixon was the one that really went over to China. But the only one that was really anti-communist was JFK, John F. Kennedy. And you know what happened to him. So, You know, it's like all these supposed conservative leaders are a pile of BS, falsely led opposition from the top, and you're saying, what do you do about it? And I'll tell you what you do about it is you just got to be independent as possible as an individual. That's really what it comes down to, man. You know, get behind all this little bullshit about RT and maybe even the Green Tree suit stuff or whatever the hell is not going to help you. Ron Paul, it ain't going to help you. And Vlad, he's I think, and I'll tell you the truth, what's really going on with this guy, he is not really controlling Russia the way people think. And I'm not talking about the people you might see that are different ministers in the government. I think the FSB controls Russia. And that's why he's playing his role. But between what's going on in Russia and what's going on with the elite in the West, they've always been in cahoots with each other. And it's going to continue that way until people, I guess, really wake up for real. And they're basically going to have to get away from, these false truthers, which is being led by, like, Russia Today, Alex Jones, InfoWars, Time Warner owned, Jesse Ventura with his, the conspiracy channels and his Time Warner owned stuff. These people, they really don't, they're not really helping in any way, shape, or form. Now, I think I'm going to start putting out some more videos about what to do if there actually is a major conflict and a situation where the United States has been I'm talking about I think this is where this is all leading to. I think there's going to be a major financial downturn in the West, and from what I understand about Putin, he's got enough pull with his inner circle. I don't really know exactly who's around him. I wouldn't know, but I know this guy is an extremely private individual. He doesn't have a lot of meetings. He doesn't have a lot of input from a lot of different people. And I think there's only a few other people in Russia that are really calling the shots besides him. But when they see an opportunity, when the West is weak, and this is coming right from Major Anatoly Golitsyn, former KGB, they're going to strike. So I'm not putting this out as something where it's doom and gloom for sure. Well, it is for sure. It's just a matter of when. I do know the warning signal, though, when you have a real heads up, there has to be an extreme economic downturn, because what they said was total financial collapse in the West first. Until that time, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen, period. That's what Major Golitsyn says. They're expecting total financial collapse in the West. Remember, Putin came from the KGB. I don't really think he's the ultimate authority in Russia. I think the ultimate authority in Russia, or authorities in Russia, actually are in the FSB, or what was known as the KGB. I think they are the ones. And it goes along with the Putin lone wolf persona, because he doesn't have power because he's got this political base all around him of oligarchs that are supporting him and ministers in government. He's a loner to the max, and that's telling me he's not working. It's not just him. It's like, I think he's being controlled. I think he's very much a part of the FSB to the max. And, that may be a unique thought, and a lot of people don't realize that. And where it's going to lead to is, I think that there is a major conflict planned. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, because nobody wanted to hear it back in World War I, World War II. And, it's not that I'm trying to paint doom and gloom. I'm trying to paint what their strategy is. Their strategy has been the Hegelian concept. Conflict produces change. Conflict produces chaos, which then you can come out with a set of rules and lay them down. You know, when we had 911, what did they come out with? The Patriot Act. They just dusted it off the shelf. Hey, we got a problem. Here we go. Here's a law. Pass it. Terrorism, right? Anytime something happens, we got an excuse to pass some new rules or set in. And also, I want to point out something else. This Gorbachev guy gave us a major hint, and it wasn't publicized much, but I read a lot of stuff. He says, you know, perestroika was one of the things that happened during, you know, the fall of the Soviet Union per se, which I don't think it ever really fell. Perestroika means restructuring. Gorbachev says the USA needs a restructuring, a perestroika of its own. He says perestroika of its own, meaning restructuring. In other words, you know, that's one of the buzzwords you hear from, you know, the Marxist area like Clinton, Obama, change, or even from the alternative area like We Are Change. Change. We don't need change, man. We need to go back to what the hell we've always been about. For God, family, country, and a republic, and the Constitution. That's all we need to be about. We don't need anybody. You know, I don't need Ron Paul to, you know, make a speech for me. And I can tell you right now, if that guy did not fight even when he had a good chance of, you know, contesting primary results he was getting screwed on, that guy would have never freaking went up against the Federal Reserve. It's all talk to the max. Nothing would ever happen, even if that guy had got elected to be president. It would have never happened. But he actually, all around, that's something I just can't believe, how people are getting hoodwinked and all this deal, because the few people are waking up, they're not even waking up to what's going on exactly. They're semi-awake. As a matter of fact, even when he saw the Ron, you know, I'm probably pissing people off about this garbage, but I'm telling you the truth, that even when Ron Paul was the, you know, going around trying to be elected for president, supposedly, really throwing his support behind Romney, more or less, but he had all his family around him. I mean, everybody throwing him money and donations, and he's hooking up his family left and right. He's out of anybody in the White House, he's got more family around him than anybody. And, you know, what he was really doing was securing Rand Paul's future. You know? I don't trust any of them. None at all. So, you know, there's not too many patriots in the United States. You know, the problem is, you know, I don't know about these guys. I don't know who the hell they, you know, this is a public image or something. It's one of these, you know, non-commercial images. But they say, you know, what's going on, though, what's unfortunate, though, in the patriot movement, it's gotten steered to be anti-Jewish by, you know, propaganda from, you know, the freaking planted. Actually, those protocols of Zion were planted by communists against Jews. You know, a lot of people are going to kill me for that, but I'm telling you right now, protocols of Zion are bullshit. It's made up garbage. And the other thing is, a lot of times in these patriot movements, you got, you know, racism. And I'm like, that's bullshit to the max, man. We're all Americans. We're all Americans. And I know one thing that's really unfortunate is black people in the United States are getting played left and right by all kinds of bullshit. I can tell you, even Obama, you know, there's another one. Obama's playing the black people to the max, too. So, you know, he's Uncle Tom Obama. So I'm going to tell you right now that, you know, the point of this actually is, though, that Putin is a lone wolf to the max. And that's another major indication that he is actually part of the KGB, FSB, and it's just seems to be playing out exactly the way Major Anatoly Golitsyn said it would play out many years ago. They got a very long-range plan. And it may very well be in concert with the Western elite to the max. Because if you look back at how the Soviet Union it would have fell apart a long time ago, and even in the 30s. And they got a lot of loans from the Import-Export Bank, Lend-Lease, a lot of technology from the West. They were built up militarily before there was even, Poland was invaded by the Nazis and Stalin at the same time. It was, there was a lot of stuff going on where they would have never had, they would have never been the great military power they are today if it was not for underhanded and secret infusion of technology and money and loans from the West. It's been planned, man. And where I think it's going to? Major conflict. So, all these guys are players on the stage. All of them. Think for yourself. You don't need to freaking get behind any of them. That's the way I look at it. Think for yourself all the way. That's you are number one. Your family's number one. Your country's number one. And your republic and your constitution is number one. Just remember that. Yeah.